Welcome everybody to the City Rev Life podcast. I'm your host. My name is Jeremy Agosto, and we're going to be starting a new series, a new podcast series currently called Back to School. And so the hope with this series is to help parents how to navigate through the school year and going through and making sure the first day of school is stress-free. And to help us open our series, I have a very special guest, Marsha Wagner.
Hi, Jeremy. I'm so excited to join you today.
I'm excited to have you here. If you don't mind just sharing a little bit of your story. So how long have you been coming to City Rev?
Sure. My husband and I have been attending City Rev along with our boys for 10 years now. And I am a principal at an elementary school. And this is my 9th year at my school. And just love it. Living the dream.
So this is going to be a perfect as far as discussion to talk about with you. Because, I mean, how long have you been a principal for?
9 years. Before that, I was an assistant principal for 6 years.
And which school are you principaling at?
I'm at Pembroke Lakes Elementary currently.
Nice.
And this is my 22nd year. I'm entering my 22nd year in education.
I'm curious, how has it been, because you have 2 sons.
Yep.
As far as navigating first days of school, how would you describe that experience?
Difficult is the one word I would pick. I am wearing the hat of a principal and the hat of a mom.
Oh my gosh.
And so I am so appreciative to my amazing husband who is always there to help and support and be there for the kids on their first days in ways that I can't be.
Do you have a funny first day of school story?
I do. When I was a teacher,
Okay.
I was very nervous on my first day of school, and I quickly grabbed my shoes, put them on, ran to school, and it wasn't until I was in my classroom that I realized I was wearing 2 different shoes.
Oh my gosh.
Lucky for me, they were very similar in color, but I was mortified.
Oh my
Talk
gosh.
about a bad first impression.
Did anybody else notice?
I don't remember anyone saying anything to me, but I'm sure they did. They had to, right? I mean, you're talking, they're looking at your shoes. Yeah.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Well, to start our time, now that we're on the subject of first days of school, what would you say would be the best way to create a first day of school routine? What would you say to that?
So I'm very excited that we're starting with this question because that was actually a point of contention in our home last year. As an educator, I was inundated with research on the importance of routines and schedules. And you couple that with the research on the importance of sleep, and I was just a monster. And so much so that I actually spoke to my counselor about the difficulties we were having as a family with the routine. And she asked me a question that changed my life.
Yeah.
And this was the question. She said, "What happens when your child doesn't go to bed on time?" And it changed my life because the reality is that nothing was really different.
Yeah.
He still woke up on time.
Yeah.
He still went to school. He still did his work. He wasn't falling asleep in class. He wasn't misbehaving. And that might not be the case for everyone, but for my child, it was. And so I think the biggest message I want to convey to parents is that yes, routines are important. Yes, bedtime is important. But we also need to give ourselves grace and understand that there's going to be seasons in our life where our routine's not going to be great and kids are not going to get to bed on time. And we just need to have grace with ourselves and say, it's okay if the routine is not perfect.
Yeah. I mean, as long as it's established, it gets better over time.
Right.
Would you say?
And there's times where it's not great and then it gets better and then you're doing great and then you kind of fall back and the routine's not great because our children have very dynamic lives now.
Yep.
You know, they have sports, they have activities, they have extracurriculars. And so there might be a season where the extracurriculars and sports might throw off the routine for a bit.
Yeah.
So as long as you do have that established routine, of course, that's very important. But having grace with yourself and saying, okay, this was not a great week or this is not going to be a great month, but we'll kind of kick it back into gear after the season passes.
It kind of takes the pressure off. So while creating a routine, what are some important things to include? or to prioritize, I should say?
Great question. I think dinner time is very important. There's a lot of research to support the importance of families gathering around a table together and having that time together, that communal time together, and having conversations. City Rev provided us with this resource, and I have this pinned up on our refrigerator in a spot where it's visually close to me, where I sit at the dining room table, and it has questions like, what was the best part of your day today? What was the worst part of your day? Where did you see God at work today? And that's a difficult question that my children have a hard time answering, right? And we can spend a lot of time talking about that. And what mistakes did you make today? So those are all great conversation starters that we can have around the dinner table.
Yeah.
And I would say the other important part of a routine is really carving out time to spend with God. So in school, we're constantly talking about the importance of reading with your child every single night. As an educator, many times, if we had 20 minutes, the 20 minutes we spent was spent reading books from school.
Yeah.
Over the past few years, I've changed that practice, and I've said, you know what? Yes, reading the books from school is important, but it's more important to spend time in God's Word.
Yeah.
And so if I have 20 minutes, and great, we spend it that way, or my husband will spend it that way with our children. And if we have 5 minutes, then we just delve into God's Word for those 5 minutes. Again, I think a lot of times we can be hard on ourselves and say, oh, I only spent 5 minutes with my child reading the Bible today.
Yeah.
I think the importance to remember is long term, you're just setting that rhythm into your child's life, and you're setting them up for that habit later on.
Yeah.
And so again, have grace with yourself. If it's past your child's bedtime and you don't have the time to read, just carve out 1 minute, pull out the Bible, read the Bible with your child, maybe a devotional. We have our devotionals that we utilize. So go to your favorite devotional, kids Bible, and spend some time that way.
So going to bed on time, dinner, and carving out time to be in God's Word as a family.
Right.
Which are the things to include in creating a routine.
Absolutely.
So now, fast forward, we reached the first day of school. Mm-hmm. What should parents expect?
A little bit of chaos, it's always, yes. Pick up and drop off lines are
crazy.
wild. Just pack your patience. It is an essential school supply, patience is. And so the car lines will get better, but you have, a lot of new students on campus, whether it's freshmen, sixth graders, kindergartners. There are lots of new people on campus that don't know what the procedure is and don't know how to exit their car in a quick manner. So just pack your patience with the car lines, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think another invisible crazy time that parents aren't often aware of is lunchtime, especially at the elementary school level.
Oh.
Again, you have kindergartners that don't really understand the procedures in the cafeteria, so sometimes lunch lines get backed up. So if you can pack a lunch for your child, that really helps. It helps your child have stress-free lunchtime on the first day. And it helps them ensure that they have their full 30 minutes to eat their lunch instead of waiting in a line that's backed up and trying to, figure out the process. Of course, as a school, we always provide extra hands to help out and assist for the first week of school and beyond. But that's always a kind of behind the curtain that parents might not see.
Yeah. All right. So now that we've established the routine prior to the first day of school, we've discussed some of the things to expect on the first day. Both the parent and the child, they're getting used to the rhythm of back to school. What would you say are things to be considerate of or aware of as far as supporting children emotionally?
So I think as parents, a lot of times we forget the power of just having a conversation with our children, kind of going back to that dinner table, having that conversation during that time. And my husband and I also find that the time just before bed is so powerful as well, because the house is typically quiet, distractions have been turned off. And it's a time where children typically open up about their day, what they experienced, what they felt, what their anxieties, worries, excitements were. So just the power of talking to your children and then framing any negative experiences or negative feelings back to the Bible and saying, Jesus felt that way too in the Bible. Let me read that to you. Or this is what God tells us to do when you're feeling nervous or lack courage. So always framing that back to the Bible is very helpful as well.
Okay, so I have a question, because this is something that I would do with my parents whenever coming back from school. They'd always ask me, "How was your day?" And I would always respond the same way, "Good." Mm-hmm. And they'd give a follow-up question. Mm-hmm. "Oh, why was it good?" "Oh, because it was good."
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not a parent currently, but just trying to put myself in the shoes of a parent, of just like, man, like I really want to connect with my with my child. Like I want to really get to know how things are going in school. So to kind of peel the onion, like how do you maneuver through that?
So I have two strategies for that. One is we talk about the highs and lows of the day.
Okay.
So peak, pit, mountain, valley, however you want to word that. And another really good way to delve into their day is to ask them who they played with at recess. For elementary school kids, middle school and high school kids, you can say, who did you sit with at lunch?
Yeah.
What did you guys talk about at lunch? So being very specific during those social times that they have in school and asking those specific questions really helps.
Yeah, because going from how was your day to the highs and lows, it's a more specific question.
Absolutely.
I have another question.
Yes.
What about when, like, coming out of a parent-teacher conference, and there was something that was discussed in relation to, let's say, a kid misbehaving, or as far as working well with the teacher, there's just some problems there. Could raise some bit of like conflict and tension. How, from a parent's perspective, how do you communicate that back to the child in a way that is loving, but at the same time truthful, like going straight to, I guess, the issue?
Absolutely. I think one of the most powerful methods to resolving those kinds of concerns is for the parent and the teacher to work together. Behavior charts are always a great way to address any kind of behavior concern. And one of the resources that I find most helpful is a forced choice reinforcement menu survey. That's a mouthful.
That's a lot of words.
But there are reinforcement menu surveys online that you can look up, and it helps you understand what serves as a positive reinforcement for your child. I did this for my own child many years ago. He had a behavior plan, and when he received X number of points, he got a Lego or whatever it was. Did this reinforcement survey with my own child and learned that adult approval is actually what his reinforcer was. And so it's important to start off with that, right? What is it that your child is going to work for in order to replace that behavior? And that forced choice reinforcement menu is great. In addition, it's important to remember the balance that we have to maintain in order to keep a healthy relationship with our child when it comes to positive and negative interactions. And the research behind that, they've called it the magic relationship ratio. And it basically states that you need to have 5 positive interactions to every negative interaction. And so as parents, that's deep, right? When our main role is to redirect and guide and assist and help, there are many times that we are negatively interacting with our children. And so remembering that you need to now reinforce this relationship with 5 positive things. So catch those little things that they're doing right and reinforce them in that way as well.
Yeah, because like in the mind and position of a child, like having to experience redirection, it's not always the easiest.
Correct.
And so just from hearing something like, oh, you've been misbehaving, or like you're not doing well in this particular subject, like that kind of takes up a lot of space in their mind. But with the help of those like
Behavior plan?
with like the 5 other like positive like reinforcements, it like affirms not only that you care, but like you love them, like everything is okay. It's just, this is something that we have to address and get better at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. What would you say to maybe it'll be like a helpful tool, but setting goals, personal goals, academic goals, like for the child, like does that have like an impact on them? Like, can that help them go through, I guess, the school year in a more confident and positive light?
Absolutely. Goal setting is extremely important. It's a valuable tool to give our children at a young age. And so I always encourage parents to pick up where you left off at the end of last year, right? So look at the last year's report card, look at pictures from the end of year ceremony or certificates from the end of year ceremony last year. Have the conversation about what did you get that you want to make sure you get next year, and what didn't you get that you want to make sure you do get next year, whether it's a certificate, whether it's a grade, whether it's behavior, socially with friends, right? So I think a good starting point is to kind of pull out that report card from last year, because that has behavior, that has social skills, that has academics, and then use that as a springboard as well. Another important component to talk about in terms of setting goals is also spirituality, right? Your relationship with God. And that's something that we as parents have to keep in the forefront for our children and make sure that we make that part of the conversation as well.
So as far as looking ahead into the new year, what would be a very important thing for parents to include to make sure they're keeping in mind while helping their children set goals?
The concept of personal best is such an important concept, especially when you're talking about academics. Many times I've experienced that parents want their child to be an A student. And for some children, that is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And so during that goal setting conversation, it's important to have a conversation about what your child's personal best looks like. As a parent, you know it. And sometimes, depending on your child's age, they know what their personal best is as well. So sometimes a C is their personal best, and it should be celebrated as much as the A. Sometimes your child may accomplish an A, but didn't really study or put forth effort. And that shouldn't be as celebrated, right? We should then talk to them about the study skills and what needs to improve in those areas.
Yeah.
So really looking at your child's personal best as you're setting those goals and making the conversation a productive conversation and not a stressful conversation for your child.
Yeah. And so taking that approach, how would a child react to an approach like that, where the parent is considerate and of acknowledging like their personal best? How would that make the child feel?
I think it relieves stress from that child because sometimes the expectations are unrealistic expectations, and try as they might, it will be an unattainable goal for them, right? So I feel like it makes it a realistic goal for them to work towards. It'll motivate them to try hard because they know that as long as they try hard, they should accomplish that goal. So I think it's motivating to them.
That's great. That's great. So going through, we already went through the first day of school and already building and getting used to the rhythm of the school year. As far as protecting the emotional aspect and the spiritual aspect for both parents and students, what would you say to that?
So one of the ways that as an adult I learned this is to prioritize your the priorities in your life and put them in the right order. And as Christians, we know that that order is God first. Your family comes second. If you're married, your spouse, and then your children. But for our children, it would just be their family comes next. And then it comes to their school responsibilities. And what I tell my kids is after those three, you order the rest of your priorities in whatever order you want. And that's so important to establish that from the very beginning. Because once the first day of school hits, it's crazy.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on, a lot of activities, a lot of sports, and life is just go, go, go. And it's important to use that as your North Star. I have had many situations where my high schooler will say to me, Mom, I'm not going to be able to go to church today because I have too much homework, right? And what do you think he expects his principal mom to say? Like, yeah, you stay home and do your homework. No, my response is, let's not forget the priority in our life. First is God, then your family, then your schoolwork. So you are going to church today, and you're either going to stay up late to finish your homework, or you're going to wake up early to finish your homework. And then you're going to talk to me about how this is not going to happen again and what steps you can take to make sure this doesn't happen again. So not just talking about those priorities, but actually living those priorities out to, as you said, protect that spiritual growth, because there's a lot of competition for our attention and our time, both as adults and for our children. And so it's important that we constantly ingrain that in our children, that God always comes first, and then your family, and then your work.
I think that's so powerful. So what are some areas parents can focus on for first day prayers?
I would say a couple of my favorite would be courage, right? Joshua 1:9, where God commands us, right, to be strong and courageous and not be afraid. And that is always helpful for our children to understand that the Lord is with them wherever they go, even on the first day of school.
Yeah.
And the other area I think would be helpful is peace.
Yeah.
Everyone feels jitters on the first day of school, even the principal of the school. And so Philippians 4:7, where you can talk to your child about God's peace transcending all understanding, is helpful as well.
And what about affirmations?
Affirmations are great. One affirmation I really like is, I'm a child of God, loved and valued. I will do my best and trust in his plan for me. And I think it's a great affirmation, not just for a child, but for a parent as well, to understand that our children are in God's almighty hands, and he is going to use our children in his plan that he has had since the beginning of their lives. And so we do our part, but God is certainly doing his part as well.
I think that's so helpful to include while praying and affirming, your child, because like you said, the jitters, the excitement, the anticipation of what class they're going to be in, seeing their friends again, but including like these prayers of courage and peace, it puts them in the right mindset. It gets them ready for the day, gets them ready for the school year. So I think that's so helpful. Thank you so much, Marsha, for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Well, we have reached a close to our episode, guys. Thank you so much for viewing. Please share it with your friends. We'll see you back next time on the City Rev Life podcast.
Thank you so much for listening to the City Rev Life podcast. Feel free to subscribe and leave a rate and review. We love it when you share it with your friends on social media, so don't forget to tag us at cityrev.church. If you're interested in more resources, download our City Rev Church app and follow us on social media. Have a great day.